All right, hey, what's up, guys? Oh, not good. That's not good. Can everybody hear me? Let me know if you can hear me or not. I'm experimenting with a couple different things, having some computer issues. So I um, actually have a Chromebook from school that I'm using to do this. I know I'm supposed to do it Saturday night, but my computer at the house is acting up. So I'm going to need a new computer. So if you can hear me, just type something that lets me know that you can hear me. I know I'm trying to work my way either away from this light. All right, I'm still trying to figure out where I sit. Oh, every time I change, it gets darker on my screen. Thank you, Alan Francois. Good to know. Happy to hear it. It's the reason I do. It's the reason I do these things that I do. Obviously, as a head coach, I have my own program that I'm running and a lot of things that are going on in my program and things that I'm constantly working to try and fix and get better. And so when I hear that, there's people out there that are benefiting from things that I do or how I do things, videos that I do, whatever it may be, it just, sorry, I'm going to keep fidgeting with this. It drives me nuts. It just makes me feel good about why I'm doing it, what I'm doing. Sometimes you need a little refresher in your life to let you know that you're doing things and the reason why you're doing them, and that there are people out there that are benefiting from what you're doing. So when I hear stuff like that, it's again, very appreciative. I don't know how I can adjust this camera that you guys can see better. Oh. One of the first things on my list when football is over is I'm going to try and get a new computer. I'm going to try and get something that is has enough memory to be podcast friendly. I'm going to try and get a microphone. Maybe it's better that you can't see my face on. Can't turn this light off because you won't see anything, I don't think. But this is bothering me. I'm sorry. But again, when you're doing the stuff that we're doing, why we're doing it, how we're doing it, the YouTube videos, trying to be instructional, trying to help everybody to the best of your ability. And it just feels good when you have people that are appreciative of the content, appreciative of everything you do. So thank you very much to those of you that are joining tonight. I know it's Monday Night Football. I know that there's a lot of other things that are going on. Jesus. So I appreciate all of you joining me. And the The reason that I wanted to do this tonight was to talk. Obviously, I have a team, two programs. I have a JV program and a varsity program that I coach, and our JV has one game left. They are 5-2 right now. They're actually playing okay. Our varsity is 2-4 right now, but it's one of those deals where we're playing really good on offense, but we're really struggling on defense. And the thing that I wanted to talk about tonight and touch upon tonight was how tough I think it is to play good defense in high school. And the reasons that I believe that to be true. On top of the fact that, in high school football, your results are always going to be based on the talent that you have and the talent that you're playing against. In most high school settings, you are going to be dealing with kids that are in your school that are supposed to be at your school. You're going to be coaching kids that show up to go to your school. You're probably not recruiting. You're probably not trying to make your roster, any better than it should be if you're doing it the right way in public high school football. And what ends up happening is based on your talent level, your schedule, who you play, what ends up happening is there's going to be some times where you are going to be behind the eight ball. And so right now for us on the varsity level, we do not play a player on defense that is over 195 pounds. So whether it be D linemen, linebackers, safeties, there is nobody on our defensive side of the ball that is over 195 pounds. And what ends up happening is when you play people that want to force the issue with run game, they want to run the ball downhill, and they want to run the ball often, you are eventually going to struggle because at the point of attack, you don't have enough in the saddle to hold up all game long. And on top of that, what makes defense, in my opinion, so tough is it's reactionary to what the offense is doing. So when you are on offense, obviously you have to execute, you have to block people. We are very fortunate right now on a varsity level. We have an offensive tackle that is a Power 5 kid. He's got 18 offers. He's 6'4", 285 pounds, and he's a great football player. We have some other linemen that are 260 to 270 pounds. We have an exceptional tailback. We have a very good X receiver, a very solid Z receiver. We have a quarterback with very good arm strength. We have a tight end that is a very smart and very good high school football player, and he's going to play probably lower level college football. So on offense, we are gifted with some size. We're gifted with some skills that are talented players. And unfortunately, on defense, we don't play a lot of guys both ways. So we just happen to be in a boat where we're very small. And we're trying to play tight front, 3 high safety defense. The reason behind that is we're trying to dictate where the ball is going to be run. We're trying to take away interior gaps and make the ball go to the C gap or beyond. We're trying to run with linebackers and then the 3rd high safety to get to the ball as it's going east and west, and to try our best by alignment to not let it go north and south. But what happens is, in my opinion, defensively, you are reacting to everything the offense does. So for us, we are a split field coverage check with me defense. So when we are playing our base structures on varsity, we are adapting to the formations that the other team is running. So every time they come out in a formation, we have to adapt our coverages, make a coverage based on the formation. We have to have coverage checks. We have to understand where the strength is. We have to understand how we're going to handle 2x2, how we're going to handle 3x1. We have to understand how we're going to handle pro personnel. We have to understand what we're trying to do. And from a defensive standpoint, the issue that I see is your kids have to react to what the offense is doing, not only formationally, but then based on the block recs that you're seeing, the run schemes that you're seeing, how you're going to fit those different schemes, where you're trying to send the ball, where you're going to get your extra hitters. And that's if they run the ball. Then if they throw the ball, you actually have to have guys that can recognize pass sets, get where they belong in coverage based on what coverages you're playing, and then based on the route distribution, if you're a pattern match team like we try to be as a split field team. So there are so many different elements involved. There are so many different elements involved to playing defense that, to me, in high school, it makes it really, really tough. Yes, we play some of Saban's Meg stuff. We do it to the trip side. We don't do it as much to the single side. We try to be 2 for 1 or 3 for 2 on a single side with every trip check we can make. We try to let offenses not beat us to the single side. We're going to try and force offenses to beat us to the trip side. But yes, we do. We do play some Meg stuff, man, everywhere he goes. But again, the thing with that, and you even see it. To me, I think people that have followed me enough know that I'm an Alabama fan. Obviously, I'm a Saban fan. We don't try and do as much of the stuff that Saban does because even at the college level, what you see is these offenses are becoming so dynamic in how they're attacking. The RPOs, the read game, the quarterback runs, the motions, the things that are getting you to adapt and change on defense. But to me, the biggest, at least in my opinion, offensively, you give the kids a play. You give them an assignment. And for the most part in high school, outside of read game with the quarterback, there's not a lot of adapting. Your offensive line has to adapt to different fronts. But we're a gap scheme team. So for our offensive line, it's a simple gap scheme that no matter what the front is, we have to block that gap scheme. There's not a lot of adaptation that changes the play or changes the theory based on what the defense does. Obviously, there's, some defensive structures and some things that you can make better play calls to, and you can get in better situations to. But you still call a play that your offense, when they line up, they know their assignments. So, we have a couple vertical choice deals in with our receivers. We don't have a lot of inside choice routes with our receivers. So from that standpoint, those are things that are going to change based on the coverage you're seeing, the leverage you're seeing, what the defense is doing. So those are things that may adapt on the fly or during the play. And that causes you to think a little bit more. It causes your guys to, change what they might be doing, how they might be doing it. And those things are tough to do. But for the most part, when you call an offensive play, you're giving your offensive formation and you're telling your kids what assignment you want them to execute. And then based on the play, the structure, you're hoping that you've got enough answers in that play. On defense, you're always asking your kids to react to something. Other than blitzing and playing man defense, what ends up happening is when you blitz and play man, and this is why you see it, to me, again, my opinion, why you see so many pressure teams that play man defense is it's a lot easier to tell the kids, this is where you're blitzing, this is how you're blitzing, and this is who you're covering. And no matter what the formation is, you're going to teach your kids that you have number 1, you have number 2, you have number 3. Maybe we have to bracket 2 backs. But, if you're going to blitz, even if you're going to blitz the formation, once the offense lines up in the formation, the defense knows that this is where we're going to blitz from. These are the gaps that we're going to attack. And it makes it simpler on the defense, knowing that that's the assignment that they're going to execute. And when you're doing things like that, I think the reason so many people play that style is it's a little bit easier to get your kids to play fast and understand what they need to do because you're not giving them a lot of reactionary assignments. So, if you're running a certain blitz track and kids are playing man to man, yes, you have to line up to the formation. Yes, you have to figure out who's playing man. But the blitz track is what it is. The kids know the blitz track. They know where they're blitzing, so they can play fast and they can get where they belong. When you're playing base defensive structures that may involve different coverage checks, that may involve your kids having to relate to different formations differently, now all of a sudden you are reacting to what the offense is doing, and then based on the play that the offense runs, you have a run fit or you have a pass responsibility. When you call an offensive play, your offensive players know that they have a run blocking assignment or they have a pass route that they need to run. So as hard as executing on offense is, at least you know that your kids understand when the play gets called what the assignment is that you need to execute. In order to play good defense or defense that is adapting to what the offense is doing, it takes kids that are going to read things. It takes kids that are going to understand the difference between a run block and a pass block. It takes kids that are going to understand where they fit based on a certain blocking scheme. If you are a spill team, if you're a 4-down team, even if you're an odd team, and you play with head up or 5 techniques that offer down blocks, you need to spill. That means that a kid's got to read a block, understand the block he gets, and then understand the reaction that he has versus that block. And that's going to be different versus a pass block, and it's going to be different versus a reach block. So all those things change at the snap of the ball, which means your defensive kids have to be sound in how they react to what the offense is doing. So to me, that is so much harder to coach, to get the right responses based on kids seeing what an offense is doing. You have to teach kids where their eyes go, where their eyes belong. More often than not in defensive football, a lot of your younger kids, especially in the high school level, they're going to want to go where they think the ball is going. So they're going to guess. They're going to have bad eyes. They're going to do some things that aren't conducive to playing good football. On offense, if you call power, you know that your O-line is going to block power. You hope that they can execute power. You hope that your tailback understands how power is going to be blocked and where the ball should be going. So to me, I think defense is so much harder to coach in high school. Tony, I'm doing great, bud. I hope you're doing great. Let me answer some of these. What's your preferred position that you'd want your D-line to line up for both 3-4? Well, fronts are all up to you, how you play your fronts. We currently play a lot of tight front out of our 3-3-5 personnel. We don't play a bunch of fronts. We play tight front, and we try to get comfortable in the tight front, playing the tight front, getting the ball sent to where we want to get to. If we were a 4-3 front, it would be about where you want to set the 3 technique. Do you have any games on? Do you have any stunts on? If we were a 3-4 that was an under team, it's going to be about where we want to set the A-shade. Where do we want to call the strength so that we know the A-shade, the 5, and the SAM are going to go to the strength. So 3-4-4-3 is a little bit different in nature based on the fronts you're playing. But again, in high school, to me, what makes defense so difficult is each front probably affects your run fits. Each coverage probably affects your run fits. We run power a bunch of different ways on offense, but it doesn't really affect how the offensive line blocks power. They're going to block power the same way they always block it. And as the front changes, they're going to have some slight adjustments, but it's not going to be a full adjustment based on what the defensive lineman does. It's going to be a gap scheme. I'm going down B gap to backside backer. If there's somebody in the B gap, I'm going to block it. If there's nobody there, I'm going to go to backside backer. If we're trying to get double teams, things like that will always be difficult on offense, but it's a lot easier for me to take an offensive line and say, listen, block power, whether I run toss read, jet read, quarterback power, tailback power, I want you to block power no matter what. And no matter what the front is, I want you to block power. When you're playing defense, you're going to come out and say, hey, if it's 2x2, we're going to be in this coverage. If it's 3x1, we're going to be in this coverage. If it's 21 personnel, we're going to be in this coverage. If it's a nub tight end, we're going to be in this coverage. And then in all those coverages, you have to react to the blocking scheme that you're seeing. And you have to fit runs based on the blocking scheme, or you have to play a pass coverage based on a pass set and then route distribution. So the defensive part that becomes so reactionary, it takes kids that are disciplined in what they're doing, disciplined in practice, understanding how to look where they need to look. And then offenses are so good nowadays, formationally, shifts, trades, and motions, that they're going to give you so much eye candy to get your kids to look in other places that if you're not disciplined enough to understand where you need to look on defense, you are going to struggle. And what ends up happening throughout the course of a game is as the offense starts to have success and move the ball, your kids on defense are going to end up trying to make plays. The more they end up trying to make plays, the more they're going to look where they don't need to look. And the more they're going to freelance and do what they think they need to do. So, to me, defense in high school becomes really, really hard to coach unless you're that much talented than the opponent or that much more talented than the opponent, and you can line up in one front, one coverage, one or two blitzes, get after someone, and the offense really doesn't have any answers. So, I'm talking about it more from a average talent standpoint. Your defense is okay. You have some good players, but you're not going to physically dominate the offense. So you have to have good run fits. You have to be solid in your pattern distribution and your pattern match. You have to understand how formations are going to change what you're trying to do. And to me, that takes not only great coaching, but it takes kids that are willing to practice every day to understand how those things change. 16, 17-year-old kids that are going to be willing to show up every day and understand that, hey, coach, this is different every time I line up. It's different to 2x2. It's different to 3x1. It's different to 2-back. And then if the offense runs a certain play, my reaction is different. So, that part of defense and what offenses are doing nowadays makes it so difficult. And all you really need to do, not only within the rules of the game, RPOs, pass interference, targeting, not only the rules of the game have made defense so much tougher, but what's made it so much tougher is the fact that offenses are doing so many things to make defensive kids think. So when you look at it this way, option football was such a great way to play football, and it's still such a great way to play football. And the academies in college and the Coastal Carolinas and the teams that are really good at running option football give other teams absolute fits. And the reason they give other teams absolute fits is they know the play they're trying to execute. They know if it's midline. They know if it's veer. They know if it's outside veer. They know if it's freeze option. They know if it's rocket toss. But your defensive kids have to line up and understand how they play midline, how they play veer. And then if your fronts or your coverages change, how it changes who the dive player is, how it changes who the quarterback is, where to me, the offensive players at least have some type of advantage that makes you say, okay, we know we're running midline. We know how we're blocking it. We know how we're reading it. The only thing that's going to change is the front, the coverage you present us. But when the ball gets snapped, we know who we're reading. We know where we're going. So your offensive linemen always know where they're trying to go. Your defensive linemen are reacting to what the offensive linemen are doing. So when you're dealing with that at the high school level and even the college level, your defensive kids have to be so disciplined and they have to be coached and trained so well that when you get that certain reaction in a certain front, you have your defensive players respond the exact way they're supposed to respond. And I look at it this way. When I watch a lot of these big time games on ESPN and I watch a lot of these quote unquote great high school teams play, I see a ton of bare front, 5-man pressure, man free, maybe 3 under 3 deep zone pressure. But I see very simplistic things that let their defensive kids line up and absolutely get after the offense. And when you have that kind of talent, that is a very solid, sound way to play football. If your talent is not as good as the other team, try lining up in bare front and playing it all night long to a team that is better than you up front, a team that is better than you at the skill positions. Try playing man or man free all night long when the receivers are better than your DBs. It just doesn't work. Is it easier? Yes, it's easier. But, can you get away with doing that all night long if you are not the more talented team? Probably not. 11 guys plus 2 deep willing to line up and do their job, make the play when it comes to them rallying a tackle. Yeah, turnovers become a product of how you practice. They become a product of how your kids play. But turnovers also become a product of being in the right place based on what you read, what you see, what your reaction is. If you're just blitzing just to blitz and hoping to make plays, there's going to be nights that works and there's going to be nights that it doesn't. But to me, that is why you see so many more pressure man teams in high school, because it's easier to coach every week. It's easier to line up to. It's easier to say, hey, guys, this is what we're doing. These are the 3 or 4 blitzes we're running. This is the coverage we're playing behind it. Let's adjust slightly to these formations. If you're going to play base defense and you're going to play coverages based on formations and you're going to play coverages based on alignment and you're going to play coverages based on pattern distribution, that becomes so much tougher to coach, because not only do you have to spend a lot of time coaching it, you have to hope on Friday night the kids you're playing are willing to look where they need to look and they're willing to react the way they need to react and not just try to make plays. I just got beat 45-44 2 weeks ago by a double tight, double wing superpower team. And we had absolutely no answers. And it's partly because of how we play and the types of bodies that we play. But they lined up and absolutely mauled us. I've had some different opinions on how we would do things, whether it be even or odd, how we would play coverage-wise. But at the end of the day, if you're playing double wing teams and they are physically better than you up front, it's not really going to matter. They're going to get foot-to-foot splits. They're going to try to not allow you to penetrate. It's going to be Tony, I reached out to a couple different people. I watched a bunch of different things on YouTube. I had 3 different adjustments that I tried. Nothing worked. We're 190 pounds up front, 190 pounds at linebacker. It's just very difficult to do. So if you guys excuse me for 1 second while I check on my kids, I will be back. I promise. I apologize, guys. Again, I'm just a regular guy. I have kids, I have cats, I have everything else that everybody else has. So I apologize. All right, so 110%. It's a fist fight in a phone booth. Football program is built upon. Yeah, and again, Tony, there are some things structurally that you can do. I've always been a fan of, trying to have answers structurally, trying to have answers schematically. But there's going to be times where at the end of the day, schematically, structurally, it just doesn't matter. If it's 260 on 190, foot-to-foot splits, you're going to get driven off the ball. Your linebackers are trying to make reads based on superpower, counter, veer. You're trying to set the edge with corners or safeties or whatever you're doing. We tried everything from even looks, 4-3, clouded corner looks. We tried odd. We tried everything. We made 3 or 4 different adjustments. We just couldn't stop it. And, I actually thought the other team should have been in it longer. They actually gave us a chance to take a lead because we're very good on offense. We actually took a 35-15 lead, and we were up 28-15 at halftime. And at halftime, they came out and spread stuff, and we got a stop, and we scored a touchdown. And the rest of the game, they went double wing. We did not stop it. And then they got a couple stops on defense, and we shot ourselves in the foot on offense. Hats off to them for never getting away from it. I told our kids all week that I thought we would see it every down. We are not very big on defense. We play spread teams better than we play downhill run teams. I thought they'd be in it all night long. I'm thankful that they weren't in it all night long to give us a chance to be in the game, to give us a chance to score some points. Because those offenses also take the air out of the ball. They go 3 yards in a cloud of dust. They take the play clock down to, inside of 5 seconds, and they do a lot of things that, kind of even the game out, balance it up when they're not as talented, outside spread wise. But and again, those things are different. They're not traditional. They're so much different than our kids are used to seeing that it's not easy to play. So. Yeah, Tony, that's the hardest part in high school. If college is getting closer to even. I don't think it's ever going to be even. The blue bloods are the blue bloods, but obviously Texas A&M just beat Alabama. I'm a huge Alabama fan. Texas A&M played 4 or 5 miserable games leading into the Alabama game, but they still have Division I players that are very good. 3-star, 4-star players that if they execute a game plan, they can obviously hold their own and win a game. High school football is not that way, unfortunately. And, sometimes it's maddening why we do it. The love that we have for what we do and knowing that we have no control over what's going to go on Friday night, on top of the fact that you have 15 and 16-year-olds that you have no idea how they're going to respond at night. But on top of the fact that you can't go out and recruit 3 techniques and 1 techniques. And if you're a 3-4 team, go recruit 3-4 personnel. You're playing with what comes in your hallway. You're playing with what registers at your school or who registers at your school. So, high school football sometimes is going to be a crapshoot. You don't have enough. Running trips bunch to the boundary line on defense, I find it easier to defend, less space. Depends on if you're a field defense or not. If you're a field defense and you go trips bunch into the boundary and they give you some coverage matchups and some things you like with high school, college hashes, you can certainly attack trips bunch into the boundary. Teams went after Alabama for a couple years. Some of the smarter, the Ole Misses and teams that know what they're doing, they put trips into the boundary because Alabama was a field defense. They got their 3 matched up on a linebacker. They went a bunch of 4 verticals. It forced Kirby Smart at Georgia now and Alabama to change how they play defense. So trips bunch into the boundary. Yes, there's less space, but it causes a lot of other issues with how you're trying to defend it. If you're trying to defend the field, there's going to be enough things that you can do into the boundary. Offenses are constantly trying to adapt and evolve to what defenses are doing, and formation into the boundary has been around forever, but it's made its way back into football because of how teams try to play defense. Yeah, I mean, Tony, it's a good way to play. It's a good way to, if you don't have those types of athletes, if you've got big physical kids up front, it's a solid way to stay in games. It's a solid way to play football. But at the same time, what's going to happen in the long run is it's hard to recruit athletes in your hallway, whether it be basketball players or other athletes. If you're double tight, double wing, the kids aren't going to want to play receiver. They're not going to want to come out and do those things. It's hard to get a quarterback. So it takes some really tough mental kids that just want to win, that just love playing football, to come out and play quarterback, receiver, in a double wing set. But it's a good way to stay in games. First time here, since you're a Bama fan, what did you see Miami do defensively against Bama since they're 4-5 that you would have done differently? Miami is not talented enough to play Alabama right now. I didn't really study that game, to be honest with you. As a fan, I just try to watch Alabama games. I don't try to analyze them. I don't get into overanalyzing what Saban and anybody else does. As a football coach myself, I'm not somebody that pops off and says every play call is wrong, blitz more, play zone more, play man more. I try to avoid that. I hate fan bases that do that. I know it's your opinion. I know it's your prerogative. If you support a school, if you pay money to buy a ticket, I know that you have the right to do that. But because I'm a coach, I try not to do that. I think Miami was outmatched. I think some of the things they tried to do were probably sound. Right now Alabama's young on offense. They have a young quarterback. A&M decided to come up with some exotic pressures that ended up working. Miami tried to pressure Alabama, and they couldn't get home, and the kid sat in the pocket as a freshman and absolutely carved Miami apart. Texas A&M got home. So, different theories, different ways of how you're trying to do it, what you're trying to do it. But for the most part, Miami and Alabama are not on the same playing level. Miami would have to do some things extremely well and get extremely lucky to hang in a game with Alabama. So 3 high to empty. So it depends on what your 3x1 checks are, number one. We try to use 3x1 checks that don't involve bringing safeties over, so that if we get 3x2 empty, we can just play the backside the way we want to play it with with a corner and a safety and a will linebacker. We can play the front side trips the way we want to play it. We've had 2 or 3 different checks within our 3 high safety system of how we want to play trips. We've played it with base 2 read on 1 and 2, the middle safety, joker, whatever you want to call him. He's got 3 up and in. If 3 goes out, he then has to, like a Mike linebacker, relate to the new 3 coming in. We've dropped the middle safety down as an extra linebacker, and we've played what we call mini, what some teams call stubby or X out, where we've played man on number 1, 2 read on 2 and 3. Backside, we allow our corner and safety to make different calls to play the single side. So we've done it a couple different ways in 3 high. I think the thing that you need to understand in 3 high defense is the 3rd high guy is really an extra linebacker. So however you handle the trip side, he is acting as an extra linebacker. So if you wanted to play traditional 2 read or quarters, he's the guy that has 3 vertical. He's acting as an extra Mike linebacker. Your Mike in traditional quarters or 2 read defense would have 3 vertical. One of the reasons teams have 3x1 checks, whether it be 4-2-5 or nickel defense, is because they don't want their Mike playing a 3 removed and having a run fit. They don't want the Mike to have a run fit and play 3 vertical if he was removed. So the beauty of the 3 high system is when the 3rd high safety is acting as a linebacker, he's talented enough to play 3 vertical. And if 3 doesn't go vertical, he can then add himself where he needs to add himself. So whether you're 3 high, 2 high, 1 high, however you handle empty, you've got to have answers for how you handle empty sets. And for us as a split field coverage, check with me defense, formationally, schematically, empty has not been the biggest deal in the world. We play 3x1 without using the backside safety. So when there's 2 removed to the backside, we're fine. I think anytime you borrow a guy from the backside to play to the front side of trips, and now teams go 3x2 empty, that's where a lot of coverage busts happen, because if the backside safety has to go play 3 vertical, that means you're man-to-man. So your will linebacker probably needs to be playing man on number 2. And if he doesn't understand versus empty that number 2 is not a tailback, he's actually in the slot, and he doesn't understand how to walk out and play that man-to-man, you're going to get 2 vertical. I've seen empty sets where 2 vertical to the backside is wide open for a touchdown because you take your backside safety and you rotate them to the trip side. So empty to me is more about, hey, if it's 4x1 empty, that's a little bit different because quads 4 receiver sets are bastardized. They force you to do something, defensively, that's a little bit different. But to me, the 3 high safety defense, one of the reasons you're seeing it have a lot of success is it's a little bit easier to get that middle safety to line up to where number 3 is. Teams are rushing 3 and dropping 8 and having more success in the passing game versus the air raid teams or the Mike Leaches of the world. But also the teams, the college teams that have big bodies are able to play the tight front or the shaded 4-eye to the back, shade nose 5 technique, and just 2 inside linebackers. And even in the NFL, you're starting to see it now. The Rams do a bunch of it where you're able to play light boxes with big bodies, handle the 5 gaps inside, make the ball go wide to where your safeties and nickels and middle safety and however you want to look at it, those guys are all out there ready to run to the ball. So I think that's why the odd front, tight front, mint front, 3 high safety defenses, I think that's why they're so successful nowadays, especially in colleges, because you can find the right bodies. Now, what happens to us in high school trying to play tight front, 3 high defense is sometimes our guys in the tight front that are 190 pounds can't really occupy the gaps properly that we want them to occupy, and it creates more space. So the 4-eye that needs to handle the B gap needs to not only handle the B gap, but he needs to handle the B gap without getting blocked 2 gaps inside, so that now the edge of the C gap is wider and it creates a bigger run fit issue. If the 4-eye, like they do in college, if the 4-eye can handle the B gap while bench pressing and separating and holding his leverage in the B gap, the C gap becomes a lot tighter. There's less room to the C gap, and now you can fit runs how you want to fit them in the C gap with your linebackers and your safeties. When your 4-eye gets blocked down 2 gaps, now the C gap is 6 to 8 yards wider, and you can't fit things as effectively as you do. So the bigger college bodies in the tight front, the odd front, are always going to be better. The guys that play, old school 2-gap stuff in college, they've got 300-pound noses. They've got 290-pound ends. They're creating pass rush with a 4th rusher that's an athlete. They're not expecting the 300-pounders to get a ton of pass rush. So the game is so different at that level. As much as we like to study it, as much as we like to copy it, the bodies that they have and the space that they're eliminating with those bodies is so much different than high school. So that's the issue we run into right now. We're trying to play that Iowa State structure. We're trying to play that new tight front, odd 3-3 stack, broken stack, 3 high safety defense, but we don't have the bodies that they have up front. And even our linebackers are 180 to 190 pounds. It's hard for them to take on pullers. It's hard for them to take on, if you're going to play a gap scheme team in a tight front and you know that they're going to block the 4-eye down, you've already spilled the ball by alignment. The ball is going to go wide. The ball is going to go to the C gap. When you spill it, now what does the next guy do? So the guard, if they're running power or counter, the pullers are going to get up on the second level. How quick can you fit with your backers? And when they go to take on pulling linemen, can they fit inside and make the ball spill? Can they hold their own against a pulling lineman? If they're 180 and he's 260, if they go downhill and spill that puller, can they do it effectively enough like the college guys do? That's the biggest deal to me, is the bodies are so different, the weight, the size, the strength. We get the ball sent where we want to get it. We get a linebacker that understands how to spill a puller But when he goes to spill the puller, he gets knocked sideways 6 yards because he's 180 on 260. So, those are the things that make it a little bit more difficult in high school. And again, on top of the fact that in high school, you've got to have kids that have the proper eye discipline. One of the issues we're battling in high school now with social media and huddle is everybody wants a highlight. Everybody wants to make a clip. Well, if you're asking a kid to spill a block, he's not going to make a highlight. He's not going to make a clip. He's going to spill a block and send the ball to somebody else that's going to make a highlight. So, for me, at least in my experience the last couple of years, our kids are so worried about being recruited. Our kids are so worried about playing football at the next level. You really have to do a great job with your culture and your buy-in. And you have to have the right kids that understand that team football and winning football is going to ask you to do things that aren't good for you. So, your defensive linemen and your linebackers occasionally are going to have to do things that aren't necessarily good for them, but they're good for the team. And, that's what makes it tough. The more you win, the easier it is to sell. The less you win, the harder it is to sell. Like right now on varsity, we're 2-4. It's hard to sell doing the right thing on defense and spilling and giving yourself up sometimes to send the ball to other people when you're not winning games. So when you're not winning games, a lot of times inherently, your kids are going to want to start doing what they think they need to do to make plays. And they're not doing that to say, hey, coach, to hell with you. They're doing it because they think that's what they need to do to make a play. And they don't trust the process of doing things over and over again. Like, we've got kids on our team that are reading out of blitzes and not blitzing because they're guessing and trying to make plays. And if you don't have backups to replace them, if you don't have enough bodies to replace them, you can't really prove your point to that kid if you can't take him off the field. In college or the NFL, when guys do that and they make business decisions and they make selfish decisions, you can pull that guy and put in another 4 or 5-star scholarship player, and you can tell that kid, listen, until you play defense the way that we want you to play defense, you're not going to see the field. So in high school, it makes it even tougher. You can't prove your point to those kids to say, hey, look, you're going to do it this way. You can if you want to, but you're going to play guys that aren't physically good enough to play. And the result is going to end up being what the result is. And the starter is going to come back and say, hey, coach, you can keep playing that kid all you want. He can't replace me. He can't play as good as I can. And it makes it a conundrum to get into as a coach to say, look, I'm either going to prove my point and we're going to play defense the way we want to play it. And we're going to play these other kids and we're going to get our teeth kicked in, or we're going to play the best players and hope that they can show up every week and do the things. You're going to keep talking about culture. You're going to keep talking about being disciplined. You're going to keep talking about making good choices. You're going to keep talking about we over me. You're going to keep talking about big team, little me. If the kids don't buy in, eventually it's just talk. And winning football games and being consistent is tough to do in high school. Yes, Dennis, it's tough to do in college. Guys want to be draft picks. Guys want to be higher draft picks. They think that they have to make plays to be higher draft picks. It's tough at every level. It makes coaching tough. But again, to me, the whole point of tonight's conversation was why I think it's so hard to play good defense. To be able to play different fronts and different coverages and have different run fits and have things that change based on gap schemes or zone schemes, to be able to play option football, to be able to play pattern match defense. It takes kids that are disciplined, good eye discipline. They understand the scheme. They understand where they need to be. They understand that if they're not where they need to be, it's going to cost the team. And they realize when it's there, to me, the toughest thing in high school nowadays is getting kids to understand and say, hey, coach, that's my fault. Kids have self-defense mechanisms. They don't want to say it's my fault anymore because they don't want anybody to criticize or ridicule or cut them down. So the natural, reaction as a human being is to say that you're not wrong. It wasn't your fault. Somebody else did something. Well, hey, look at what the safety did. That's just natural as a defense mechanism. And it takes a real solid individual with a great family background and years of good programming to be able to come in and say, hey, coach, I should have spilled. I fit that block wrong. That's 100% on me. Hey, coach, guard pulled. I pulled my trigger in the A gap instead of going over the top. That's on me. Hey, coach, 3 went to the flat. I didn't play 3 to the flat. I saw 2 do something else. That's on me. Hey, coach, 2 went to the flat. I should have triggered down 2 to the flat. I stayed on 1. That's on me. It's hard for kids to do that because inherently a human defense mechanism wants you to say, it's not my fault. It's somebody else. Nobody wants to kind of accept blame. So, that's the society we live in. That's where we are. Some programs have a little bit easier time than others. But again, winning also helps you do that. Heck, you bring up a great point, when Dennis, you say, yeah, it still happens at Alabama. It still happens at Clemson. It still happens at Ohio State. Unfortunately, it's the world we live in now. We live in social media, instant gratification, what's best for me. And it's very hard to promote a team atmosphere. It's very hard to promote decisions that are made based on what's best for the team. High school kids are going to make decisions every day, and they're going to make a lot of bad ones. And you are going to have to find a way to discipline those bad decisions and to get them to understand that those decisions that they're making affect other people. And you can't make decisions like that. And that makes it even harder as a high school coach, because when you make that decision to discipline somebody, your backup is nowhere near as good as the college backup is. Your backup is probably nowhere near as good as the top high school program in your area. If I'm dressing 70 kids between my varsity and my JV team, and I'm having to use kids in both programs, it's going to be a lot harder for me to make decisions discipline-wise than it is for a team that dresses 140 kids. And when they discipline a kid, they say, hey, next man up. Sorry, you decided to do this during the school day. Here's the punishment. Here's what we're doing. And the next kid goes in and he does as good, if not better than they do. And you get the Wally Pipp, Lou Gehrig scenario where that kid made a bad decision. You were forced to discipline and do something that you needed to do to teach that kid. And as you taught him, the next kid went in and played better than he played. He may never get in again. And now you deal with losing that kid who may need football, who may need that extracurricular activity in his life. Because in high school, when it's not a multi-million-dollar business, we are doing things for the best interest of kids. I argue with my assistant coaches and sometimes administration, getting rid of kids, cutting kids, disciplining kids the old school way that you want to discipline them is not always in the kids' best interest. With the family backgrounds that these kids have, knowing that they struggle to come to school to begin with, knowing that they struggle getting to class on time when they have a game on Friday, knowing that they struggle being where they need to be on campus with a game on Friday, take that game away and then tell me what those kids are going to do. Take that game away and tell me this kid that has a hard enough time getting to class, a hard enough time being where he's supposed to be, a hard enough time getting, C's to have a 2.0 to be eligible. Take football away from them. Make your job easier as a head coach because you're eliminating what could be quote unquote cancers. Make your job a little bit easier, but did you really do what's in the best interest of that kid? Are you really helping that kid? Or is trying to deal with the manifestations of that kid's behavior better for that player? That's neither here nor there. You could argue both ways. You could be old school and say this is my way or the highway. And your program may function a little bit better, but you're going to lose some kids that you could have helped along the way if you just would have been a little bit more understanding of the kid's situation. So that's going to be the toughest part that we deal with as high school coaches. You're going to have some decisions that you need to make that aren't easy. And the old school way and the disciplined way of thinking to make the decision to say, hey, this is what we do and this is how we do it. That's real easy to do. It's real easy to say. But at the end of the day, you may end up hurting that high school kid And that's really not your job. Your job is to try and affect positively as many high school kids as you can. And if, taking the old school hardline approach is the way you want to do it, you may help some kids. You may teach them some life lessons that help them down the road, but you may also do that kid a disservice. So that's always going to be the toughest part. And that's up to every coach. Every school is different. Every administration is different. Every coaching staff is different. I just know in my experience, it's tougher for me as a head coach to say, you're done. You decided to do this. Goodbye. Because I know that kid may have nothing else. And if I say goodbye, he doesn't come to school anymore. If he's coming to school now enough, he's coming to school and he's getting on class enough, he always has some transgressions that you're dealing with. To me, you have a better chance if he gets to school at all, if he gets on campus at all, you have a better chance to impact him and possibly help change his demeanor. If you cut him loose and send him packing and he never comes to school, whether you're a teacher, a coach, an administrator, what impact do you have on the life of a kid that never comes to school? What impact do you have on the life of a kid that can't get to your campus? That to me is always the ultimate tough question as a coach. Where do we try and give second or third chances to kids that need them? Where do we draw the hard line and say, you can't be a part of our program? It's not easy. It's never going to be easy. And if you care about kids as much as you care about your win and loss record and your resume, making those decisions are never going to be easy. So, that's another thing that's always going to be tough as a coach, always going to be tough as a teacher or an admin. Yes, there's hard lessons that you want to teach kids, but there's also every kid is different and every scenario is different. So, yeah, Tony, I agree with you. Football gives kids some sort of structure. If they still are not understanding what the structure is with football, then maybe you need to pull it. But I know for a fact that if they're struggling with the structure that you're providing and they're still struggling, if you pull that structure from them, they don't have a chance and you'll never make a difference. So we're going on an hour, guys. I appreciate you guys being with me. I appreciate you logging in tonight. I appreciate you listening to what I have to say about why I think defense is difficult, why I think it's more difficult than offense, why I still preach to this day that coaching defense is always going to be a little bit more difficult than offense. Thank you for everything you do for PlayFast Football. Thank you for letting me somewhat help, if I can, with your coaching career or maybe your personal life. I don't know if it's Merry Christmas yet, Chris and everybody else, but happy holidays to you guys. Hopefully you're safe. Hopefully you're playing football. The fact that we're having this conversation is better than it was a year or two ago. Whether there's going to be a fifth corona strain or another pandemic, who knows? But the fact that, I'd rather be 2-4 and struggling on defense than not coaching football. So these conversations are great. Having an audience like you allows me to have these conversations. Stay safe. Keep working hard. The Christmas tree is there year round, guys. So that's not, I appreciate the humor. I appreciate you guys realizing that there's a Christmas tree, but that tree is there because that's where my wife wants it. And this is the extra room in the house. This is the man room. Whatever my wife tells me to do, I'm going to do. So if it means a Christmas tree in the back, then there's going to be a Christmas tree in the back. Chris, Merry Christmas to you. Florida State won 2 games in a row. Maybe Mike Norvell's the right guy. I love him to death. So Merry Christmas to you for those 2 wins. I will see you guys, as always, somewhere down the road. Next YouTube video, next YouTube Live, next Patreon video. Keep doing what you're doing. If you have any questions or anything you think that I might be able to help with, go ahead and ask. I appreciate everything you do for me. I appreciate everything you do for high school football. And as always, you won't play well until you play fast. And I will see all of you next time.